For the record, will you please state your name?
David Wilkinson,
And Mr. Wilkinson, what is your occupation?
firefighter paramedic.
And on December 3rd, 1998, how were you employed?
I was employed as a paid-on-call firefighter EMT with the Village of Pleasant Prairie and currently acting as a paramedic intern.
And on December 3rd, 1998, do you recall being dispatched to any location within the Village of Pleasant Prairie in Kenosha County in the state of Wisconsin?
Yes, I do.
Where were you dispatched to, sir?
To Lakeshore Drive in the 9000 block for a pulseless non-breather.
And that location is in the Village of Pleasant Prairie in Kenosha County in the state of Wisconsin?
Yes.
And what were you dispatched to that location for, sir?
Pulseless non-breather.
A pulseless non-breather?
Correct.
And what is a pulseless, in your vernacular as a paramedic? It's kind of self-explanatory, but please tell us what a pulseless non-breather is.
It means that the patient does not have a pulse, indicating their heart's not beating and that they are not breathing.
Now, how long after you received that dispatch did you arrive at that location?
I arrived in my personal vehicle approximately, I'd say, within 2 minutes.
And what did you do upon arrival at that location?
I entered the structure, the home, went into, I believe it was a bedroom, and found Julie inside the room there.
Julie Jensen?
Yes.
How did you identify her as Julie Jensen?
We were found some prescription bottles in the area, which stated her name, indicating that it was a female, and in the same room we used that initially.
Aaron, where are those photographs? Are they on your desk?
There's one of them there, I don't know whether they're there.
You said there's one of them here?
No, the
they're all
clerk had
here?
one, does she have all of them? Okay.
I'm going to show pretty much all of them. I'm going to start with this one. So if you want to look through those again, Mr. Wilkinson, I show you this photographs and marked as Exhibit S10. Can you identify that photograph?
Yes.
Is that, and what is that photograph?
That is Julie Jensen's bedroom with her lying on the bed.
Does that photograph truly and accurately portray the condition or the position that you found Julie Jensen in when you arrived at the scene?
Yes.
And upon your arrival, then what did you do, sir?
Quickly checked for a pulse on her neck, found no pulse, attempted to roll over. We found her stiff, not breathing, and noticed some pooling on the blood on the left-hand side of her face.
And as a result of your training and experience as a paramedic, what significance did you attach to the fact that she was stiff, as you put it?
With her being rigid or stiff and having the pooling of blood, it indicates that she has been down for a significant amount of time, and the possibilities of resuscitating this patient would be very slim.
By stiff, is that another term for rigor mortis?
Yes, sir.
So you found rigor mortis present upon arrival?
Yes, sir.
So when you observed her in that fashion and you observed that there appeared to be no pulse, there appeared to be no breathing, and she appeared to be stiff, what did you do next?
To confirm death, we placed a heart monitor on this patient. At the time, we were using 3 patches on the patient, which are like little stickers. We apply them onto the body, 2 up on the top of the chest, 1 on the bottom, and looking at our monitor, it then indicated no electrical activity of the heart.
Now, examining Exhibit S10, as you can see, she's kind of laying on her left shoulder over on her chest. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And her face is in a pillow?
Yes.
So you wouldn't have had access to her.
Sustained.
So how were you able to put the EKG leads on her in the area that you described?
To facilitate that, we pushed the patient back more to her left side to give us sufficient room to place the leads on.
I show this item is marked as Exhibit S12. I ask you if you can identify that.
Yes.
What is that?
That is Julie Jensen again in her bed.
And now the bed clothing is pulled back?
Yes.
And what is that white patch that's just peeking beneath her shirt
That would
there?
be one of our electrodes from placing it on the patient.
And is that the way she would have looked as you were placing them on her, or is that after you placed them on her and put her back in her original position?
That would be,
Assumes facts, not in evidence.
Well, why don't you tell me this? What does that photograph depict?
it depicts her lying in the bed following the time that we had placed the monitor on and had already taken it off.
And that one pad that you can see there, is that one of the upper pads or one of the lower pads?
That would be one of the lower pads, sir.
And so there are two more pads on her person?
Yes, located up on the top of her chest.
Now, in that position that you see her in there, is that the position that you found her in, or is that a different position?
I believe that is the position we found her in.
But with the bed sheets pulled back?
No, the bed sheets were not pulled back.
So when you found her, the bed sheets were not pulled back,
Not to that extent.
but in this picture, the bed sheets are pulled back.
Yes.
So that picture shows Julie Jensen as she was when you found her.
Actually bleeding.
It's heading off that way.
Okay. What is the difference between the way that you found Julie Jensen when you first arrived at the scene and what you see there in that picture?
When we initially found her, she was mostly covered and the phone was off the hook. I placed the phone back on, and then when this picture was taken, the covers had been pulled back to facilitate us moving the patient to place the pads on.
Now, when you look at the photograph S10, you really can't see the left arm there, can you?
No.
But when in Exhibit S12, you can see the left arm.
Yes.
Now, you never moved the left arm?
Not that I remember.
So that was, as far as you know, that was a conditional left arm when you arrived there.
Yes.
Now, did you examine anything about Julie Jensen's face at the time that you were at the scene?
We did notice her face that it had pooling on the left-hand side and some dried blood in the area of the mouth or nose.
So you did remove her face from the pillow at some point?
As we were rolling her, yes.
I show you this photograph. This is marked as Exhibit S8. Counselor. Can you identify that photograph, please, sir?
Yes, that's Julie again.
And what does that photograph now show?
That shows some pooling of the blood on the left hand. I'm sorry. It'd be on the patient's right hand side, in the eye, and also of her lips.
Could you just point to where you see the pooling of the blood?
Right there, and then around the eye, and on the bottom of the face, and down to the chin.
Okay. Now, does that photograph truly and accurately portray the condition of her face at the time that you saw it?
Yes.
You'll notice the nose and the mouth appear to be malformed or pushed off to one side,
That's correct.
and that's the way you found her when you rolled her over?
Yes.
Now, did you ever attempt any resuscitation?
No, we did not.
So you never tried mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or anything of that sort?
No.
And that was because she was clearly and apparently dead?
Correct.
Your Honor, I would move for, I guess first, let me show you Exhibit S11. And can you identify that photograph, sir?
That would be Julie Jensen again.
And again, now that depicts her face as it's still in the pillow,
Yes.
and somebody's pulling her eye back.
Correct.
Does that photograph truly and accurately portray the position of Julie's face when you first arrived there?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, at this point, I would request that these photos exhibits S8, S10, S11, and S12 be received into evidence subject to cross-examination.
Any objection?
I do object, Your Honor. I presume they'll come in at some time, but I think I need some cross-examination, and I also think the person who took them, because we don't know the timing of these photographs, which I think is a significant issue.
Your Honor, I've laid the foundation for admission of these photographs. The witness has identified these.
Well, wait, the cross-examination.
Okay. Well, Your Honor, I did want to ask that they be published to the jury, but you would wait till after cross-examination for that as well, then?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions of this witness.
Mr. Wilkinson, you wrote a report in this case?
I believe I did, yes, sir.
Yes, that's fine.
I'll show you some mark as exhibit D21. Send that to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilkinson, is that the report you prepared in this case?
Yes, it is.
And that's 4 pages?
Yes, it is.
And the 4th page is a narrative report, correct?
That is correct.
Could you do me a favor? There's a bait stamp on the bottom of that page. Could you tell me what the numbers are, just on the first page?
On the first page, sir?
Yes.
On the first page is 000951.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson. And Mr. Wilkinson, you were a paramedic intern, is that the term you used?
Yes, at the time I was.
Okay. And I take it one of the first things they were teaching you to do was to write reports?
Yes, sir.
And I'll ask you to stop looking at the report for just a minute, sorry. You were trained to mark down or note anything that seemed unusual, correct?
Correct.
And you'd make those observations and put them in a report, right?
Correct.
And you did that on the day when you came to the Jensen home, true?
That's true.
And nowhere in your report do you make any notation about there being anything wrong or unusual looking about Mrs. Jensen's nose, correct?
Correct.
And we spoke with you, that is myself and Mr. Jamboys and Ms. Kavidra, and then Ms. Kavidra spoke with you again, correct?
That is correct.
Just today?
Yes.
And at that time, we asked you if you noted anything unusual about Mrs. Jensen, and you said you had not noted anything unusual, true?
That is correct.
And then Ms. Kavidra asked you specifically if you'd noticed anything unusual about the nose, and you said you had not, true?
Correct.
Now, I think I got the quote right, and just tell me if this is correct, that you removed her from the pillow when you rolled her over. Would that be true?
Yes.
And you're not sure if you rolled her all the way over to put on the patches and then put on the patches, or exactly what you did, correct?
Correct. I can't state the degree of the roll.
Okay. And then you rolled her, you generally rolled her back, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know if she was you didn't try to duplicate exactly where she was, you just rolled her back in a similar type position.
Correct.
and rolled her face back into the pillow. Is that right?
Right.
And when you found her, I'm going to show you S12. And that's a picture of Julie Jensen with the covers rolled back, correct?
That's correct.
And let me show you one other, S10, Mr. Wilkinson. And that's one without the covers rolled back.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in both those pictures, she is not in a fetal position or a semi-fetal position, true?
The reason I called it a semi-fetal position is her knees were slightly bent up and laying partially on her side.
Okay, so you might call that a semi-fetal
Yes, I
position? Okay, okay. But you can't, you're unable to say whether when these, well, let me back up. You saw the picture with the, and I think it's one of the ones you have in front of you, I think it's S12, that shows the EKG monitor pad, right?
That is correct.
And what you had to do is you rolled her over, and then you had to lift her shirt and put on the pads, true?
Correct.
And the two upper pads were up near the clavicle, is that correct?
Just slightly below the clavicle on each side.
Okay, above the breasts and just below the clavicle?
Correct.
And then you had to hook up some wires to those pads,
That is correct.
which were connected to a machine,
That is correct.
and then you performed the EKG, and it confirmed what you already suspected.
Correct.
And then you had to take off those wires and the pads.
Our normal procedure is that we leave the pads on and just connect the wires.
And that's, I guess the pad is on the, in the photograph.
Correct.
The wires are not in the photograph.
Correct.
And there's no sign of your EKG machine in that photograph.
That is correct.
And do you recall if you were there or not when photographs were taken?
I do not remember photographs being taken while we were on scene.
So those were taken sometime later?
I believe so.
And again, you didn't try to make any effort to put Julie Jensen exactly in the same position as you had found her, which is roughly how she had been before.
It's roughly as close as we can get, yes.
I mean, you didn't turn her back over and then like adjust her shoulders a little bit or her head or anything like that.
No.
You had rolled her over, put on the pads, did the EKG, rolled her back over with her head in the pillow, and then your duties were done there. And obviously if you weren't there, you can't say how much later the photographs were taken, right?
That is correct.
And you don't know if there's any manipulation of Julie Jensen in between the time you were there and the time that the photographs were taken.
That is correct.
And when you say some pooling of blood, you don't mean that the person is bleeding, right?
No.
Okay, what pooling of blood is if somebody is on their side for a long time after they've passed, that the blood will drift to the bottom side?
Correct.
And, okay. And you didn't recall being there and noting anything unusual about Mrs. Jensen's arm or anything, right?
Not at the time.
Right, well, not at any time, true.
Sure.
And you didn't notice anything unusual about the nose at the time, right?
No.
Or at any time?
No.
And when you say no, you're saying correct to me, right?
You're correct, sir.
Okay. Bad question, thank you. That's all, thank you, Mr. Wilkinson.
Mr. Wilkinson, those photographs truly and accurately portray Julie Jensen as she appeared at the time that you arrived at the scene?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
I'd request the photos be published to the jury, Your Honor. I'd request they be received into evidence and published to the jury.
Objection.
Judge, I just think that the person who took them, and so we can establish a time frame in which that they're
Well, I don't, actually, that's not, I don't think the critical question, but rather whether they fairly and accurately depict the object portrayed. And based upon that, I'm going to receive them and permit them to be published.
I don't think S13, Craig, S13 hasn't been identified yet, so I wasn't going to publish that one. If you wanted, do you want S13?
I just showed him
identified?
S13, right?
Oh, you did?
And I think I just showed him.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll just to make it complete. Mr. Wilkinson, I showed you this photograph that's been marked as Exhibit S13. Can you identify that photograph?
I get it. Jensen.
And that's after the bedspread had been pulled back?
That is correct.
And what is this on her right hip, just right buttock?
Appears to be some bruising.
Is that photograph truly and accurately portray Julie Jensen as you saw her that day?
Yes.
With that, Your Honor, I would propose to pass these photos among the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask each one of you to look at the photographs and then pass them along.
If you look at one and then pass it on, and then just as a matter of housekeeping, attorneys, on the 25th, which I think is a Friday, I think, at 11:30, I have to hear another case by phone. It will take about a half an hour, so we'll just break early that day.
Sometime off in the distant future.
But just so you're aware of it now, I think it's 25th of January. At 11:30.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions of this witness.
Just a few, Judge. Now, Mr. Wilkinson, in identifying these photographs as accurately portraying Mrs. Jensen at the time you saw her, that's the bed that you saw her in, right?
That's correct.
Those are the clothes she was wearing.
That is
right?
correct.
You see the pads she was wearing, or not wearing, but that you had applied, correct?
Correct.
These were clearly taken after you first saw her, so there are some differences from the time you first saw her, true?
True.
And you have no recollection of her nose being in that condition, true?
It was something I did not note in my report, and I have no memory of that.
And that's something that's sufficiently unusual that you would have noted it if you had seen that at the time.
Not necessarily.
Did you ever tell anybody about that?
No, I did not.
You didn't put it in the report?
No.
And you do recall some dried blood around the nose, right?
I believed I did, correct. I'd have to look at my report to give it.
Well, before you looked at your report, when Ms. Kavidra was speaking with you before court today, she asked you about the nose and you recalled some dried blood, right?
That was in my recollection, yes.
But you didn't recall anything about the nose being crooked, correct?
Not at the time, no.
So you can't tell us whether something happened to the nose after you put her back in the pillow or not, right?
Correct.
That's all.
Mr. Chairman,
No further questions.
you may step down, sir.
This day we call Jane Lewis to the stand, Your Honor. I'm going to be getting some stuff over here, but for the record, will you please state your name?
Jane A. Lewis. My last name is spelled Lewis.
Can I have a seat back? Thank you. And by whom are you employed?
I'm a forensic document examiner at the State Crime Laboratory in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And how long have you been so employed?
Since 1985.
And can you, here's the, and what do you do there?
I'm a forensic document examiner. My work consists of the examination of questioned handwriting, handprinting, typewriting, commercial printing, and other documentary evidence with known materials in order to determine the origin or authenticity of the questioned material.
Are you certified in this capacity?
Yes, I'm a diplomate of the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners.
What is your educational background?
I have a Master of Forensic Sciences degree from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. During graduate school, I was a student intern at the Secret Service Laboratory in Washington, D.C. I also have a Bachelor of Science degree from Marquette University in Milwaukee.
What training have you received for the examination of questioned documents?
I was employed for 2 years in the FBI laboratory in Washington, D.C., and during that time, I participated in the FBI's Document Analyst Training Program. Following that, I worked for a year at the Secret Service Laboratory in Washington, D.C., and I also participated in the Secret Service Training Program for Question Document Examiners. And then I received additional on-the-job training when I came to the State Crime Laboratory in Milwaukee from Arthur Belensky, who was a former document examiner there, and from Jerry Kelly, who was at the Madison Crime Lab in the state system.
Do you devote the majority of your time at the State Crime Lab to the examination of the questioned documents?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the jury how handwriting comparisons or examinations are made?
Yes, handwriting comparisons are made by performing a side-by-side comparison of questioned material with known using appropriate lighting and magnification, and sometimes special instrumentation.
Would you explain the basis for handwriting examination?
Yes, handwriting identification is part of the work of forensic document examination. It's one of the forensic sciences. It's one of the identification sciences. It's based ultimately on the principle that no two people write exactly alike. Individual characteristics will develop in each person's handwriting, and they will repeat themselves. And these individual characteristics are used in combination by a trained forensic document examiner to determine if a person did or did not write a questioned document.
Now, Ms. Lewis, did there come a time when you received some documents from the Pleasant Prairie Police Department concerning the investigation into the death of Julie Jensen?
I did receive documents submitted by Pleasant Prairie Police.
And did you have occasion to examine those documents?
Yes, I did.
And what were you supposed to be looking for when you were examining those documents?
The documents submitted to me were an envelope and a questioned letter. And the comparison materials were an extensive known writing sample written by Julie Jensen. And the known writing sample consisted of normal course of business writings collected, which included a calendar, day timer with an address section, a couple of letters. There was also some journal entries. And then there were 43 canceled checks. That was the group of known writings submitted. And I was asked to compare the handwriting on the envelope and the handwriting on the letter submitted with that extensive known writing sample from Julie Jensen.
So what did you do then when you were assigned this task?
I made a comparison of the handwriting on the envelope submitted and the handwriting on the envelope with that extensive sample from Julie Jensen. I first examined each item on its own visually and then microscopically. I subjected them to some instrumental analysis just to determine if the inks were consistent on both the envelope and the letter itself. And then I made my side-by-side comparison then with each questioned item with the large known sample that was submitted.
I show you this item that has been marked as Exhibit D4. And I ask you if you can identify that item.
Item D4, is that what this is?
That's the item up there, yes.
Item D4 appears to be an enlargement of the question letter submitted to me in this case.
Now, would you please tell the jury, or can you show the jury what you did when you were comparing these known samples to the contents of this letter?
I did prepare brief exhibits to just show you some of the individual characteristics that I observed in the question letter and their counterparts from the known sample.
Would it assist you in describing this process to the jury to be able to make use of those exhibits?
Yes, it would.
Okay. What do you need in order to show the jury these exhibits?
I need to use your projection device. If you have an Elmo.
I think that's it right there.
All right.
Right over here. So come on over and use it if you would, please.
May I step down, Your Honor?
Yes. It'd be hard to operate if I'm there.
Do you know how to turn it on? Because we don't. There we are. Well, that's not what we wanted. There we go.
Well, this is actually unnecessary now because you have this enlargement of the question letter, but what I was projecting was just the overall image. I was going to show you where I took the materials on my enlarged charts, and they're from this. So I'll move that aside. But all the materials on my question charts to show you today, the words are taken from this document, which is a letter with a signature at the bottom of it. And before I begin showing you some of the details, I mentioned that handwriting identification is based on the principle that no two people write exactly alike. And one of the other principles is that no one writes exactly the same way twice in repeated writings of the same material. And that's called natural variation in handwriting. And it's very important to my work because when a case comes into the crime lab, I do not expect that I will ever find an exact overlay of one letter in the question document in the known writings. But what I do see in an identification is a significant group of details in the question writing that appears somewhere in the known writing. They will not be exact overlays. But an example of natural variation on the chart, if you look at the known side, the E in Jeff's, for example, begins with a short little beginning stroke and a short ending stroke. And if you look at the second E in Every, it's a different construction. It begins above the baseline and there's a curved ending stroke. These E's were all made by Julie Jensen. They're all part of her known writing sample. They're certainly not exactly alike, but they fit within her range of variation. And another example of this variation in writing, you can see the V in Every is that formation, and then the V in David on the known side of the chart is more of an angular formation. Those were both made by Julie Jensen. They were taken from her known writing sample. They're not exactly alike, but it's part of her natural variation in handwriting. This question word, affair, was taken from the letter, and I chose to show you the two F's, and the second F overlaps the first, and you can see that also in the double F combination in Jeff's. So it's this writer's habit to form that second F over the top, intersecting a portion of the curved top bit. And then there's a cross stroke also that crosses both F's. The word everything on the questioned and then the known is written So there's initially more of a printed form, and then the word thing is in cursive, and you can see that that occurs in both the questioned and the known. And it is this writer's habit to make that G with a counterclockwise formation for the upper loop. It appears in both the questioned and the known, rather than a conventional C-shape approach. And also the Y and everything in the question and the known actually appear quite different. The first Y on the question side of the chart is in two pieces, whereas the Y on the known side is made with one stroke. But the reason I chose to show you these two is there's a little bit of a significance with the ending stroke. There's a bit of a tick off to the right with both of these. And there are two forms of this Y that do appear in Julie Jensen's writing, but it is her habit to end with this little ending tick, which is individualistic. The word prescription is listed because it was this writer's habit to reverse the E and the R in the word prescription. It appears in the known letter item on the easel, and also throughout the known writing sample. It was also this writer's habit to use an ampersand, a plus sign to represent an ampersand. And throughout the letter, there are examples of this plus representing an ampersand and no evidence of a little loop. And you can see that also taken from one of the canceled checks in the known writing form, that there's this plus sign rather than it represents an ampersand. And here's this formation of the G again in Douglas that is made with a reverse loop. It appears in Douglas, a more abbreviated form on the known side of the chart. But if you go back up to everything from the known, there's that formation again. And finally to the Julie Jensen's signature, which appears at the bottom of this letter. Here it is enlarged approximately 4 times beneath the question side of the chart. And you can see on the known side of the chart that the signatures overall are rapidly and naturally written. There's curvature and some feathered ending strokes, and that's what indicates the speed and naturalness. The J in Julie on the question side of the chart, it's a large upper round loop and a lower thin projection that occurs on both sides of the chart. And then the U in Julie in the questioned side of the chart looks almost like a V, and that's true also on the known side of the chart. There's an open eyelet to the L. The position of the I dot on the known side of the chart is between the I and the E, and it's this writer's habit to position the I dot there. And what was somewhat significant is the C in Julie on the question side of the chart. There's a little bit of a drag stroke at the end of the C, and it joins, instead of a dot for a period, it's a compound curve stroke. And that occurs also in one of the canceled checks. There's the C, instead of being followed by a period, it's a bit of a compound curve stroke. And finally, the surname Jensen, there's a similar formation of the J with the large upper loop and the spiky lower projection in the question and the known. The N in Jensen consists of a asymmetrical N, a tall peaked shape, one arch, and the other one more broad and shorter. And the ending N in Jensen consists of one arch and a long smooth stroke. Based on this combination of individual characteristics that occurred in this known letter and also occurred in the known writing sample of Julie Jensen, I was able to conclude that the writer of this question letter was indeed Julie Jensen.
And also with respect to the envelope?
The envelope is included also.
Okay.
Yes.
In your file, do you have a photocopy of the letter, the original letter, and the original envelope?
I do.
Could I see, are those up there with you right now? How do you turn this off now? So,
Do you not have a copy of the envelope?
if you've got a copy, if
I had one, but
we'll make a copy for you if that's the only one you got.
it's the only one I have.
We'll make a copy for you. Thank you. I request these be marked as exhibits. And we're going to need photocopies of them before the witness leaves. So these items have now been marked as Exhibit S22 and S23, and do these photocopies truly and accurately portray the original documents that you had examined in this case?
S22 is a copy of item F, and that is the letter that I examined in this case. S23 is a copy of the envelope bearing a handwritten name, item E, that I examined in this case.
I'd request, Your Honor, that S22 and S23 be received into evidence subject to cross-examination. I'd further request, I guess instead of sending the letter around for each person to read it individually, I'd just request I be permitted to move that letter closer to the jury so they could all read it at one time.
Any objection? First, to the admission?
I don't think so. I just want to see exactly
Sure.
what he has here.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's a photocopy, it's not the original. I wouldn't let you hold it otherwise. So. Okay. Do you have any objection?
No.
Okay.
No objection.
Do you have an object to me putting, whoop?
No objection.
Okay.
All right, the letters, the exhibits will be received.
I'd like to have them
Again?
photocopied, so can I give them to the bailiff and please make a photocopy so the witness can take, yeah, she just needs to take one with her.
Numbers what again?
S22 and S23, Your Honor.
All right, they'll be received.
And ladies and gentlemen, we'll place this letter in front of you all here and request that you simply take the time to read it. I'll leave it here for a minute or two, long enough for all of you to read it. Thank you. You can have these copies to take with you.
Thank you. Would you care to, shall I leave these here?
You can take those with you. Read the process. Oh.
Has everybody had a chance to read the letter?
Thank you. And Your Honor, I guess I'd also move D4 into evidence in view of the fact the witness has identified it, and I have no further questions of this witness.
What is it for?
D4.
D4, it'll be, unless there's objection, they'll be received.
No objection.
It will be received. Mr. Albee?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Before court today, you had an opportunity to briefly review a report that you had done back in 1997, correct?
Yes, I did.
Let me show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 20. Defendant's Exhibit 20 contains a cover letter from your supervisor, Michael Camp. Is that right?
Dr. Camp is now the retired but former crime lab director.
So he was your boss at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you in fact prepare, a 2-page report on July 25th, 1997?
The report is a 1-page report.
Okay. What's the third page of that document then?
The third page is a photocopy of question items submitted in this case.
Okay. And in 1997, you were asked to look at a postcard to see if you could match writing with 2 samples, correct?
Yes.
And
No.
I'm gonna put on the document that you examined for comparison in a moment. Okay, could you tell me if what's on the screen is what you're looking at in your report?
Yes.
And you were given a writing sample of Mark Jensen's to compare to that postcard, correct?
I was.
And you determined that Mark Jensen had not written that postcard, correct?
No.
Tell me what your conclusion is.
My report said that based on the exemplars submitted, so based on the known writings submitted, it was determined that the question writing on item A1, that would be the postcard, was probably not written by the writer of item B, Perry J. Tarika, or item C, Mark Jensen.
So you looked at a known writing sample of Mark Jensen and determined that he was probably not the writer of that postcard, right?
Yes.
And you looked at some known writing of Perry Tarika and determined that he was probably not the writer of that postcard, correct?
That's correct.
I would move exhibit, is that D20?
D20.
I move exhibit D20 into evidence.
Is there objection?
I don't see the relevance, Your Honor, but I don't have an objection.
It will be received. That's kind of an inconsistent statement, but I take you at your last word.
I guess
so
I don't see the
If you don't have an
problem.
objection, you don't have an objection, so it's overruled. So if you're going to, if you're not going to object, you needn't state grounds to it.
Well, then I don't object, Your Honor.
Okay,
And it's because we have this witness here. I don't know if it'll become relevant. I suspect it will. That's all I have.
any question?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down, and we'll take a break, folks. I'm going to say 15 minutes, and as long thereafter as is necessary for you to be ready. Okay? So that if you're ready in 15 minutes, we'll start again, but that, if they want to smoke, they may do so.